Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, and today we're going to dive into a topic that happens so frequently that I get asked about this 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week. And the topic is this: what should I do if my sales call turns into 2 calls? Meaning I'm not able to get done what I need to get done in one call, and now it turns into another call. How should I handle that situation? This trips up people for a lot of different reasons, and it's a significant part of people's success or failure in sales. So today we're going to dive into this topic. We're going to explore the importance of what you need to do when your sales call turns into 2 or even more sales calls so you can still generate maximum success. We're going to tell you all the things that you need to know to make this process more effective. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist. And today we're going to dive into a topic that happens quite often to people in regards to sales. And it's this challenge that people face when one sales call turns into 2 or even more sales calls. Look, for everybody that's out there actively selling, no matter what you're selling, no matter what industry you're in, many times what you think might be one sales call turns into 2 or more sales calls. And despite our best intentions, things don't always turn out exactly the way that we think they're going to turn out. So today, I'm going to peel back the curtain, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you create effectiveness when this happens, how you actually should handle these multi-step sales call situations, how you should position yourself and what you do the right way when this happens. And most importantly, how you avoid this from impeding your sales success. For a lot of people, this is an Achilles heel. And we're going to talk about that for the next few minutes. See, let me paint the picture for you. And maybe this will strike a nerve or strike home for many people, but a lot of times we go into a sales interaction. Maybe it's a sales call, maybe it's an appointment, a meeting, and we have a preconceived thought or notion as to what's going to happen, or we're hopeful of what will happen. And maybe we think that at the end of that call, we will have a result where we have signed new business, a new contract, a new client. And that's great. We should have those types of thoughts. That's a really, really good place emotionally to be. But many times, things change. Even when we think we have everything dialed in exactly the way that it should be set up, things can change. Look, a lot of things can change. Things could change with the situation. Things can change with the prospect. Things could change with the timing. You know, how many of you out there have ever been at the point where the client is ready to sign a contract, or you think they're ready to sign a contract, and something stops the process? Maybe it's an interruption. Maybe it's you run out of time. Maybe it's whatever, right? Insert reason here. It happens a lot. And what I've learned over 36 years now of professional selling in working with people in every possible sales environment is what you do next when that happens can really impact your success or failure in sales. If you handle that challenge the right way, it can position you for greater success. If you don't handle it the right way, if you go off in a direction that isn't going to be productive, you'll find that it will make it much more difficult to win business when this happens. So let's unpack this a little bit. Let's do this in the form of a story so we can all understand it and imagine it being our story, our situation, our client, interaction. So you're having a great conversation. You've proposed what you do. You really understand what your client's challenges are, your prospects' challenges are, and what they need to do to fix them. And you have the ideal solution for what it is that they do. your product, your service, your offering is absolutely going to solve the problem, and it's going to address the needs that they have. Okay, so we're going to make some assumptions, but those what they are, and those are assumptions that are realistic, considering if you actually expected to be signing that client, of course you could deliver on helping them solve their problem. So you get to that point where things are um, at the stage where you expect them to sign or purchase your service, your product, your offering, and something stops it. Maybe let's just say for the conversation, you run out of time. They have another meeting, they can't move, you run out of time, and the way things get left is, look, I'm I'm definitely in. I can you come back Thursday, Friday? We'll take care of this contract. We'll take care of this agreement. Can you send it to me? Let's get this wrapped up here in the next couple of days. And of course, you're going to say, yes, whatever it takes. So here's what happens a lot of times. I'm going to talk about what not to do first, and then I'm going to talk about what you should do second. So, what not to do first, what you should do second. So, in that situation, what you shouldn't do, the thing that you should not do, never do, is when you come back to re-engage them. I don't care if it's in an hour, in a week, in a month, in a year. When you come back to re-engage them, do not immediately jump to the point of them signing the agreement. Do not immediately jump to the point of them signing the agreement. Why shouldn't you do that? Here's why. More than likely, most of the time, maybe not in the example of an hour, but let's just say a couple of days, a week, a month, whatever it might be, more than likely, there have been dozens of things that have happened with or to that client since the last time you spoke with them, since the last time they were in that place where they were making that decision. Things have changed for them, whether you know it or not. And they might be small changes, there might be major changes. So the worst thing that you could ever do is just come in and just jump to the point of them signing the agreement. I've been on appointments where people have literally said, well, when we last spoke, we were getting ready to sign the contract. Here's the contract. Let's get this going. Worst thing that you can do. Now, why is that the worst thing? And some people might disagree with this. So if you do, all I ask is that you be patient and listen to my explanation about it. You shouldn't do that for this simple reason. Many things have changed for that prospect. You don't even know what they all are, and you probably never will. But you cannot make the assumption that they are still as ready, as comfortable with moving forward with you as they were when you were last at that point. So your mission, your goal, your objective, your ultimate destination is not to get them to sign the agreement. Yes, of course, we want them to sign the agreement, but your main objective is to get them to the same emotional place that they were in the first meeting when they were ready to sign the agreement. The same emotional place. Now, why is that so important? Because if you don't do that, and let's say they do sign the agreement, somewhere in that process, they may get buyer's remorse. They may regret or question why they did that. They may push back because they don't even remember why they did it. They just remember that you got together again. It seemed like it was a little rushed. They signed the agreement, and something is going to break down in that process. That's one scenario. Another scenario is they may not sign at all. They may push back and say, well, remind me again why we're doing, like, you aren't getting them to that place. So that's the wrong thing to do, completely the wrong thing. Now, I know that there are people that have been out there that have actually done that, and the clients have signed and things have worked out, and that's great. I'm happy. But the majority of the time, the preponderance of situations, when you go through that, you will not get that client to A, sign with you, and B, stay with you in that situation. So that's what you shouldn't do. So let's take a couple of minutes to talk about what you should do. And I mentioned it earlier, but we're going to describe it in detail now. What you absolutely should do is get them back to the place emotionally where they were in the first meeting, the first interaction. Now, why is that so important? and I'm going to go back to an oldie but a goodie, but it is still so very true. People buy on emotion and they justify their decisions using logic. So logically, the decision may make a lot of sense, and it ticks all the boxes financially. It does all the things that their logical brain tells them that it should do, and that makes sense. But that's not really why they're doing it. They're doing it tied to some emotional reason. So your mission, your goal should be to get them back to that same emotional place, that same emotional condition that they were in when they were ready to sign in the first meeting. Now, why is this so critical in a second meeting or in a third meeting? Because, you don't want to have to go back and review everything about your offer. But if you have to, you will. So how you bypass that, how you get there faster, is to go back to the same emotional place that they were. So let's just say, for example, in the first meeting, your prospect says to you, we're really interested in doing this because we know your solution is going to generate an additional $250,000 for us annually. And that $250,000 could do a lot for our business. And you being a professional salesperson, somebody who really understands psychology and understands the importance of positioning things the right way, ask the most important question you could ever ask at that point, which is, that's great. What would you do with the $250,000? And they say, well, we would hire some new staff. We would invest in some additional marketing. We would do things that we currently aren't able to do to help grow the business. And then you're going to ask the most important question you could ask at that point, which is, well, that's great. What do you think would happen if you did that? Would it generate more business? And you get your prospect on the process going down the path towards recognizing the growth, the impact that decision could have. And ironically, this is the same process that you take somebody through if budget is a concern and they think the cost is too great, or they think that your product is too expensive. You're going to walk them through that same process. Now, why is that so important? It's because you need to get them to that emotional place. And the emotion comes from the logic of, yes, it was a good decision, but here's what it does for me. Here's what it means to me. Here is how I'm going to feel about it when I do it. And let me give you another example. Let's say that $250,000 for that client frees up enough of the owner's time that they can now take a vacation that they haven't been able to take in 5 years. Do you think price matters, or is it about emotion? Do you think logic matters, or is it about emotion? Of course it's about emotion. So when you're in these multiple stage calls or multiple appointment closes, it's important that you get your prospect back to that same emotional place that they were in the first place. If they were ready to sign before and you've explored all of that before, you need to go back to that with them. Now, here's what you do in that second call. You go back to them and say, before you get to the contract piece, you say, Mr. Customer, I'm so happy that we're getting a chance to sit down again. I was going back over my notes and remembering our conversation. And I remember you mentioning how important it was to you that you were able to take some time away and reconnect with your family. That vacation time was important. And you knew that the only way that you could get there is if you were able to bring in some more staff. And I'm so incredibly excited that our solution is going to free up enough capital for you to be able to do that. But before we get to that, could I ask you again, tell me about the importance of that to you and your family. Tell me about that vacation. What would that look like? Now, why am I doing that? It's because I want them to get back to that same emotional place of remembering the impact that would have on them in their life. Now, more importantly than me wanting them to remember it is I want them to verbalize it. I want them to verbalize it. Now, why is that important? Because when people verbalize things, it starts to take place in their physical reality. See, when we think of things, it's in the back of our mind. When we start to really digest and think about it in detail, it's in our conscious reality. But when we verbalize it and put it out there and share it with other people, it now starts to take place in our physical reality. It starts to become something that people want to have happen. It starts to become something that is real. See, real or imagined, it doesn't really matter in the eyes of the prospect. It does once they get to that point that they realize they need to have it. See, people's emotions, their minds, their thought patterns are powerful, and you need to get them working towards thinking about the impact that your solution would have. Now, why is this so relevant on multiple call situations or multiple appointment situations? Because if you don't get them back to that same emotional place in that follow-up call, your likelihood for success is much, much lower. If you can get them to that same emotional place that they were in during your first interaction with them, the likelihood for them signing with you is incredibly high. Also, it's incredibly likely that whatever that decision is, they will stick with and move forward with. And I share that with you because many times people are able to get clients to sign and make commitments, but buyer's remorse can sometimes unravel a transaction. And if you don't get them to an emotional place about the emotional reasons why they are doing something, you don't have as much to work with if buyer's remorse comes up. Let's say that same client reaches back out to me and says, I don't know, Joe, I think this might just be a little bit too much for us to take on right now. My response would be very, very simple. I'm sorry to hear that, but let me ask you this question before we talk about that. When we spoke about this, one of the primary reasons that you really wanted to do this was because you knew that this solution would free up about $250,000 for your organization. You knew it would allow you to invest in your business, add some staff, and really what it would allow you to do is to take your hand off the steering wheel for just a little bit and get some time back with your family, get some vacation time. And the only question I really want to ask you about that is, has something changed? Has that become less important to you? And I just would like to know. Now, most of the time, people are never going to say that that's less important, but it now has them reminded about why they are doing what they're doing. See, if you never bring that up and somehow they do agree to sign that agreement, if they never bring that up, you don't have as much to work with. Yes, maybe that you can work with the financial benefit, of course. But if you don't make it emotional, if you don't make it real to them and really tie to emotion, that's a logic-based decision. And they could logically put it off. They could logically say, well, we're okay. We're having a decent year. We could look at this next year or, next quarter or whenever, right? So the reason for doing that in these 2 call appointments is simple. You need to get these people back to that same emotional place. And if this process drags out, if it goes to a 3rd appointment or some other extension of this, you need to follow the same process. Repeat it. And that is so, so important. See, here's the reality. What do you think they're going to remember more? Do you think they're going to remember chapter and verse on your product, your service, or your offering? Of course not. They're not going to remember all of those things. They're not going to remember what it does. What they are going to remember, if you describe it the right way, is what it does for them and the impact it has. But they'll only remember that if you uncover it, if you uncover that emotional place that they are in. See, if you don't invest that time in uncovering that, they aren't going to think about it emotionally. They will think about it logically. And logic is where many deals go to die. They die because there isn't an emotional connection to the agreement. Now, Why is that so important to your success? Because if you can master getting people to that emotional place, that is what they will remember. I just said a moment ago, they're not going to remember about your product, your service, the details of exactly what it does, but they will remember what it does for them and how it makes them feel. How it makes them feel. If the end result of working with you is they get back more time with their family and it gives them that extra vacation, that extra peace of mind, that extra comfort in their situation, they're going to remember how that makes them feel. Now, until that happens in reality, it's your responsibility to discuss it with them and get them to verbalize it. See, when people verbalize it, they're in a sense taking it out for a test drive. They're thinking about it more, they're verbalizing it. It's now becoming something that is really taking shape in their emotion. If they never verbalize it, if they never talk about it, if they never open up about it, it is much more difficult to convince them to move forward. But when they do verbalize it, when they talk about the impact that it has on them, their life, their family, their business, their finances, their overall emotional well-being, when they talk about it, it's taking shape. And it's very, very easy for them to remember how that made them feel. See, how do you effectively transition from one appointment to two appointments and still convert at a very high level? You bring them back to that same place where they're feeling that emotion. Now, that may look different with each prospect, but the process is still the same. It's going back to what's most important to them, exploring it, making sure you understand what it would mean to them, getting them to verbalize it. Now, here's the trick. It's very difficult to do that in the second appointment, but it's very easy to do it if you did it in the first and you're continuing it. Because the temptation in the second appointment is to just get down to business. Let's just get down to talking about the agreement, what we do and what it'll mean. No, we need to get them to that same emotional place. So my message is make sure it's done in that first appointment and get back to that place, get them back to that same place in the second or third or however many it takes. When I look at top performing elite sales professionals, the type of people that produce millions of dollars in sales, it doesn't matter what their industry is, not only are they great at mastering, uncovering the emotion for people, but they are masters at in conversion when that call turns into a second call. They set up that next call correctly. They create the right set of expectations. They understand exactly the importance of getting people back to that same emotional place. They do all the things that are necessary to ensure their success. That's what elite sales professionals do. Doesn't matter what your industry is. If you look at all of them, it's a common denominator with them all. They do that masterfully. The people that struggle in sales, when I analyze the things that they're not doing well, and these are the things that I work on at the Sales Activist with people, when I analyze those things, one of the major things that comes up is they don't carry over emotion well into second and third appointments. They struggle with it. Maybe it's impatience. Maybe it's feeling like they were farther along in the sales process than they really were, but it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter what the reasoning is for that prospect, as long as you go back to talking about the impact it has on them. If you can't get your prospects back to that same emotional place in that second meeting, your likelihood for success is probably less than half of what you think it is. But if you can somehow get them back to that same place that they were emotionally and get them to verbalize it again, you can very easily and sometimes very quickly get them back to the place where they're ready to sign and move forward with you right then and there. So my mission is all about helping people master that. And my great hope for all of you in this process is that you don't shortchange your success by shortchanging the process of that first appointment leading into the second, because this can have a huge impact on your overall results. It's important that you master this skill. And it really comes down to just listening. It really comes down to understanding what means the most to your prospect, what emotionally will impact them the greatest, and not being afraid to talk about it with them. Not being afraid to talk about it with them and get them to open up and share it. Because once they start to verbalize it and it starts taking place in their conscious reality, that's when they really start to want it. They really start to want it. They may not have even known how much they wanted it until they started verbalizing it. They may have known there was a problem. They may have recognized they had a need. They may have realized that there was a deficiency, but they didn't want to change it. But when all of a sudden emotion is brought into the conversation and they start to verbalize it, they may want to change it in a big way. And that's where you need to take your sales process. When you are carrying over from one meeting into the next, and it doesn't matter if it's a phone call, a Zoom call, an in-person meeting, doesn't matter what the environment is, the process is the same. Get them to that same emotional place. Don't be like that first scenario, that person that does it the wrong way, where they jump right back into the contract. They jump right back into maybe even jumping right back into talking about how amazing their product is, but they don't explore the emotional impact that it has on their prospect. Because whether you're just talking about the contract or you're just talking about how great your product or your service is, none of that matters to your prospect. What matters is how it makes them feel when you deliver what it is that you're supposed to deliver for them. So don't sell yourself short by failing to explore the emotional impact in that follow-up call. When I would ride along with sales representatives on teams that I've led across my career, I would always pay very, very close attention to follow-up meetings, follow-up appointments, because I wanted to understand how well my people understood the sales process. And when they didn't emotionally bring people back to that place, I was quickly able to show them why it was important to get them back on track. When they made those changes, the results were there. So don't fall short of doing that for yourself in your business. There are so many different things that are important about generating emotion in your sales interaction, emotion tied to what means something to your prospects. And this is particularly important when you're dealing with multiple appointment or multiple call sales interactions. If you do this well, your sales will rise. If you do this poorly, your sales will fall. So make sure that you master this skill. Now, we just went through a lot of information. I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist, and we're back. Wow, today has been a great episode. We talked about the importance of uncovering and re-uncovering emotion in the sales process on those second follow-up calls. This is so critical to your success. I hope that this content has been valuable to you. I promise you, if you deploy these types of changes in your sales process, you will lose fewer deals and you will sign more business. This is an important part of your sales progression, mastering the importance of handling those second calls the right way. It's not uncommon at all for people to struggle with this. So if you're struggling with this particular issue where you think you're going to sign a client, it doesn't happen, and then immediately afterwards, they're either ghosting you or worse, you sit down with them and it just doesn't close, I can absolutely help you with that. It's a challenge that helps to a number of people. Listen to this episode again, grab some of the tidbits that I've shared. And if I can help you personally address this issue, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on my digital assistant by texting the word sales to the number 409-509-7355. This is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist, and this has been the Impact Sales Podcast. We'll see you soon. Take care.